Go ahead and take your seats if you could. We're about to get started. I am Dorothy Basso, the president of the PTSO at the high school. And welcome to everyone. We're so glad you're here. I'm here to introduce Pat Bridwell, our moderator. And this is the candidate forum for the Alamo Heights School District School Board. So welcome everybody, and thank you to the junior school for letting us be here. Are we ready to get started?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I didn't tell
Well, there's really no introduction that needs to be made. My background is that I'm a retired corporate finance attorney, practiced for about 35 years, and I serve on some local boards, and I have also been a moderator. I'm not a professional moderator, I'm a volunteer for this evening, but I have been a moderator in the past for functions and programs that are put on by the State Bar of Texas. So I have been able to tell lawyers when to stop talking, and able to do it pretty effectively, so I will try to do so tonight, but gently. We want this to be very informal. I'm going to sit down and I will have some introductory remarks, and then I'm going to turn it over to our candidates for them to have their opening statements. So I would also like to welcome you for coming this evening. This is the Alamo Heights Board of Trustees CandidateForum, and we're really delighted that you are very interested in meeting and hearing from the candidates who are going to be on the May 6th ballot for election to the Alamo Heights Independent School District Board. We have 4 candidates, as you can see, participating this evening, 2 each for place 3 and 2 for place 4. The candidates for place 3 are Ryan Anderson, and you might just wave your hand even though you have your name in front of you. Some of us, if you're not wearing your glasses, may not be able to see it. And Jim Natoli. And the candidates for place 4 are Margaret Judson and Amy Voorhees. You should have received, when you arrived, a copy of the Election Voters Guide. It will be very helpful if you have it, because on it you'll find the candidates' written responses to 5 questions which tell you why they're running for their respective board positions. If you didn't receive a copy, please pick one up before you leave. And now, before we get started, I want to take a moment to ask you, please turn off your cell phones or put them on mute, if you will. Okay, the forum is going to last 90 minutes. The format we're going to follow is as follows. The order of the candidate opening statements was determined by a draw from each place. The question order thereafter will be alternated between the opposing candidates so that each has an opportunity to respond first or last during the course of the program. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves and to state their reasons for running for the Board of Trustees. Each candidate will then have 1 minute to respond to a total of 10 questions that have been compiled by the combined PTO Council and questions that were submitted by voters, perhaps some of you in the room, in response to a district email that was sent out on March 21st. The question will be repeated for each candidate by me as moderator. After the candidates have responded to all the questions, they will have 3 minutes each to make a closing statement. The formal program will conclude following the candidates' closing statements. During any time remaining, which will be up to about 15 minutes maximum, the audience members may individually speak with or ask questions of the candidates. So now let me run through the ground rules. The ground rules, which the candidates have all agreed to honor, and which we ask you, the audience, to also honor, are as follows. The candidates will treat each other with respect, both by their words and their actions. No interruption of the person speaking is permitted by another candidate or by an audience member. There will be no questions taken from the audience prior to the conclusion of the program. Audience members shall respectfully refrain from excessive responses for or against any candidate. I know that's not going to happen here. If necessary, this rule will be enforced by me. The moderator and the timekeeper, and Deanna in the front row here is our timekeeper. We're responsible for strictly enforcing the time limits for the opening and closing statements and each question. The timekeeper will give each candidate a 20-second warning by showing a yellow card to the candidate and a red card and a ding bell when their time has ended. The moderator may interrupt the speaker to enforce this rule if necessary. Candidates have been instructed to use their brief response time to succinctly and directly respond to the question asked by the moderator. Rebuttals of statements of another candidate may only be made in the candidate's closing statement. So without further ado, we'll now move on to the first candidate's opening statement. And I invite our first speaker, who will be Amy Voorhees, to begin. And she has 2 minutes for her opening statement.
Fellow taxpayers, parents, teachers, and students, my name is Amy Voorhees, and I'm running for place 4 on the Alamo Heights School Board. Let me make one thing clear from the outset. I am not a politician. Far from it, I am first and foremost a mother, wife, friend, community watchdog, and attentive taxpayer. Since 2005, I've been engaged and involved with the district in many ways. Now that my sons are in high school, I have begun to reflect on our years in this very special community. Here's what I love most: diversity. So many folks from so many different backgrounds. Communication. We're always looking out for each other. Spirit. 09 and Mule Pride. Teachers. Truly amazing. Coaches. Teaching our kids life lessons on and off the field. Students. Engaging, caring, and dynamic in so many ways. And last but not least, friends. I didn't grow up in 09, but I got here as fast as I could. I have on several occasions considered running for the school board, but felt I did not have the time with young kids to raise to dedicate myself to the job. This year, with both of my boys charging independently into young adulthood and driving, I feel it is my time to give back to the community by serving on the board. My goal is to ensure that all families have the opportunity to raise their kids in a loving, supportive community that also provides an outstanding education. As a board member, I would make two things my priority. Always act with honesty, transparency, and accountability. Always ask critical questions, even if they are the most difficult ones. Asking questions, listening to community members, and coming up with policies and solutions that represent our values are of utmost importance. As the ultimate authority in the district, serving the community must be the board's primary objective. As a board member, I would always have an open door policy. I'm here for you. I'm fully committed to making Alamo Heights the best possible place for your child, grandchild, friend, or neighbor to get an education. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next opening statement will be made by Margaret Judson.
Good evening. Thank you for being here this evening. Oops, sorry about that. Okay. Good evening, and thank you for being here this evening. And thank you to the President's Council for hosting this forum and all the work that you put into making it happen. I'm seeking re-election for place 4 on the ballot. We are at a pivotal moment in the history of our school district. It is imperative that we have discerning, committed individuals to serve. I've had a passion for education and students for many years, beginning with working in Washington, D.C., when education was at the forefront of the national debate. Both my parents were educators, and I've seen firsthand the tremendous impact that teachers have on the lives of students, both in the present and more importantly in the future. I also realize the importance that we, as members of our community, can have to shape the discussion. My involvement with Alamo Heights began over 9 years ago when I decided to serve on the Strategic Planning Committee. Honestly, I was quite skeptical that a school district would really be interested in hearing from parents, and secondly, would actually implement some of the suggestions. And it was a great experience for me. I served on the Closing the Achievement Gap subcommittee. The district has implemented over 49 of those recommendations. I continue to serve our school community in numerous capacities, while serving at both the junior school and the high school as a PTO. I was the president of the high school PTO, and I worked with a principal who allowed me to try some different initiatives. One of those was the showing of the Race to Nowhere film, where we discussed overscheduling our children, and we had brought in community leaders who spoke and really engaged our parent community. The other thing that I did was I encouraged our students to really get actively involved in this school district and events. And as a board member, I continue to stay plugged in with both the profile of the Learner Committee and serving on the DEAC. I think it's important as a board member that you stay plugged in at the local level and the grassroots level. I'm proud to have served alongside some amazing board members, and I want to encourage to grow and implement the plans that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Our next speaker will be Jim Matola.
Thank you everyone for coming tonight. I know it's a little early. We have children to get here, so I appreciate you all showing up. I'm very happy to be here. You know, we've lived in town, my family, for 8 years. My wife Kelly, my son James and Julia both graduated from Alamo Heights High School. James is a sophomore at Trinity University, and he plays on the baseball team there. And Julia goes to Belmont University in Nashville, plays on the golf team. So, you know, just some of my past experience. Before we moved to Alamo Heights, we lived in Massachusetts. And in Massachusetts, I did serve on the school board there for more than 3 years. I first got appointed because we had some financial issues. And my background is as an accountant and a golf pro. And I went in and helped rectify the financial issues and then got elected to the school board. Served as chair. I served on the town finance committee in Long Meadow on 2 different occasions and on their investment committee. I've always been involved in coaching sports. I've coached every sport imaginable: basketball, baseball, football, golf. And being involved in the community in which I live is very important to me, and I feel like it's an obligation, and I've always done that, and I'm just looking forward to hopefully serving on the school board. My time on the school board in the past, I really enjoyed, and it's very important work, and I hope to serve you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And our 4th speaker is Ryan Anderson.
Good evening. Looking out at the crowd, I'm reminded of some words by Paul Simon. My wife Kelly and I went to see him at Municipal Auditorium years ago, and it was a fairly small crowd, and he walked out there and looked at us and said, "Welcome to the enlightened few." And then he played an incredible concert. So I think for you enlightened few, we will give you answers, and hopefully you will go away from it as upbeat as Kelly and I were. I'm running for a very simple reason. I believe the Alamo Heights Independent School District is an excellent district. I have 4 children who are currently in it. My twin sons, Eric and Grant, are graduating seniors. I've got a daughter, Eleanor, who's a 7th grader, and a daughter, Sadie, who is a 5th grader. All told, they have had 40 years of education in this district, and Kelly and I talk to each other and comment about we could not point to a single teacher we've had in all that time that we wish our children didn't have. And I think that is an amazing comment on the quality of this system. I think it is absolutely outstanding. And I think part of the reason it's outstanding is the way the community is involved. And part of that involvement requires serving. And so Kelly and I talked about it. I've been interested for years in running, and we decided now was a pretty good time. With the boys graduating, we have 2 fewer people to try and coordinate schedules with. My law practice was in a place where I thought, okay, I've got time to do this, so now is the time. With very little time left, I was raised, and we'll talk about more, raised by 2 teachers. Education has been a passion of mine forever. And I just would like to serve on this board. As we share ideas, I'll explain to you what I think I can contribute from my experiences. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you all for your opening statements and for honoring our times. Now we're going to proceed to question 1. I will state the question, and I will restate it for each of the candidates if you would like to have it restated. The first question is going to be directed to Ryan. What attributes do you think are essential for an effective school board member?
I think the most important attribute that a school board member has to have is the willingness to compromise and the willingness to work together. I've been on 2 school boards. They were much smaller school boards. One was the Circle School here in town. The other was St. David's Episcopal School. And one thing that I learned in that, including being chairman, was you have diverse experiences, diverse ideas. And when you are making decisions and hashing through policy, you need to hear all of those diverse ideas. But you also need to listen to the other people's ideas. And then in the end, you all have to compromise, and you have to come up with a policy that works for all students. And then the other attribute is humility. Because once you make that decision as a board, you have to be uniform going forward in the community. Once the decision is made, it's a decision of the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, the question is, what attributes are essential for an effective school board member? And Jim, will you please respond?
That was a very good answer, Ryan, because that's, you know, the effective boards, people can share their ideas, and they might be different, they might have different opinions on an idea, but being able to talk about it, come to a conclusion, and then decide what's best, in this case, for the school district or for the children, I think that's imperative for any board, especially for this board. With my past experiences in serving on boards, I'm a very opinionated person, but I can state my opinions, but I'm also a very good listener. You know, part of my profession is I listen to people all day long and deal with people. So I can state my opinion, but I can also listen very well, and I'm a very open-minded person.
Thank you. Margaret?
I would say having an open mind and a compassionate heart. I think as a school board member, you also deal with a lot of really difficult personal issues of students, and just finding that common ground and being able to also listen to the opinions of different people. I have, in these past 3 years, we've had some very difficult, challenging issues that we've discussed, and I have to say everybody was very open-minded. We had rigorous debate, but at the end we came to a consensus and came together on those decisions. But people were open-minded, and I think that that's what you have to have when you're a school board member, is to be willing to hear everybody's opinion, but also keep in mind who you're representing, and you're representing all students.
And Amy, would you like me to restate the question?
Yeah, thank you. I heard a quote the other day that I thought was very appropriate to life into this, and that is, you have 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth, and they should be used in that proportion. I think listening is super important, not only in personal relationships, but certainly when you serve on a board with other people. I consider myself to be a very critical, creative thinker. I love to turn problems on every angle. And most of all, I love to talk to people who think completely differently than I do. Denise DeGear and I have had numerous conversations, and she and I don't see eye to eye on everything, but we have wonderful conversations, and we actually come to a better understanding of our own beliefs by talking to each other. So I would say listening, being open-minded, and thinking critically are super important.
Thank you all for your thoughtful answers. Question number 2, and this is going to go first to Margaret. How do you view the role of a trustee?
The role of a trustee. Well, the role of a trustee is we are entrusted to serve you, the public, the voter. And we take that role very seriously. And at our meetings, we come to the table, like I said, with an open mind to discuss the issues and make decisions on your behalf. So I take that role very seriously, and I don't have a personal agenda at those meetings or at any time. And that's all I would say. It's an important and very valuable role that we play in the community. And I don't think that people really appreciate exactly what that role entails, but sometimes it can be a very difficult role. You make a lot of really big decisions along the way. So thank you.
Thank you. The second speaker or responder to that question will be Amy. And the question again is, how do you view the role of a trustee?
I think ultimately the role of a trustee is to ensure that every child in this district has the opportunity to have an engaging education in a safe, loving environment. So that ultimately is the goal. But I think also as a trustee it's important to stay plugged into the community, because I haven't been on the board, but oftentimes when issues are raised, I get calls from people, what do you think about this? Have you heard about this? And I think it's important to keep your ear to the ground, know what's going on, and have an open door so that people know that they can call you, because oftentimes one call can solve a lot of problems. So my intention would be to stay plugged into the community and to have an open door policy so that anyone could call me at any time with any concern.
Thank you. Our next responder will be Ryan. How do you view the role of a trustee?
I think a trustee on a school board and the school board itself is a bridge between the community and the administration. And in that role, I think you have to listen to the community, gather information from them, and then advocate on behalf of the community to set policy for the administration. I think the role of school board has three main functions. It sets the budget, it sets policy matters, and it hires the superintendent. And setting the budget, obviously, in these times is critical. We've got state government that is squeezing our money harder and harder, so the budget is more and more difficult, and we have to allocate resources so that our students have what they need to achieve the policies and the goals we set out for them. With regard to hiring the superintendent, the board hires the superintendent, and then you have to stand back and let them do it. Peter Holt was smart enough to hire Pop. Peter Holt is smart enough not to coach the Spurs.
Thank you. And Jim?
Thank you. I think the role of a trustee is to work with the superintendent to make sure that the policies that we set forth as trustees are followed on a day-to-day basis. But also, it's a political position, and you really have to advocate for the children in the community. And I think that's very important, and one of the things that we need to do as trustees so that we do get the funding that we need. But also, with the bond elections and things like that, if you're advocating for the children and the public trusts you and the community trusts you, then hopefully we can continue building the school district and keep making it better.
Thank you. And Jim, you can retain
Okay.
the microphone, and we'll begin with question 3. How does the role of a trustee differ from the role of the superintendent?
Well, the trustee hires and fires the superintendent, and the superintendent runs the day-to-day operation and hires everyone else of the district. And so we're a policy-making board, not a day-to-day management. That's what the superintendent does. And if we do our job, then he can do his job, and we can support him with what he needs to do that.
Thank you. Ryan, would you next respond, please?
I hinted at it in the last one, or the last answer. The trustee, as I said, they hire the superintendent. The trustee sets the policies, they set the goals for the school district. And then it's the superintendent's job as the administrator of a very large bureaucratic organization, through the principals that the superintendent hires, through the teachers that are hired, to then put that policy into effect. And I think it is very dangerous when trustees begin to believe they need to micromanage what the superintendent is doing. I think set policy, also be there to advise, be there to listen. As the ears of the community, the trustees should have a finger on the pulse of the community, and when the superintendent wants to discuss policies, help the superintendent with that, with giving the feedback. But I think you have to be very careful not to cross the line into micromanagement.
Thank you. Amy?
Okay. These guys said it so well, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to come up with any original words. So the superintendent absolutely is in charge of day-to-day management of the district in every way. And the board is there to oversee policy and make sure that the day-to-day operations fall in line with the policy. The other interesting way that I think that a superintendent and a board member can interact is that our superintendent, Dr. Brown, has kids here, lives in our community, but he's not so much enmeshed with day-to-day life as we as board members are. And so I think it can be a very effective relationship to let him know what's going on in the community, because he may not hear the same stuff that we have. So I think working together, he can let us know what's going on in the schools, we can let him know what's going on in the community.
And Margaret?
Yes, can you repeat that question?
Certainly. How does the role of a trustee differ from the role of the superintendent?
Yes, the superintendent, he manages the day-to-day, as we said, the operation of the school. He is the chief executive officer of the district, okay? And the school board hires and fires the superintendent. Our role is not to micromanage what the superintendent does. As you can see, there are districts around our community have gotten in a lot of trouble recently from micromanaging and also having their own personal agenda. So in our case, our success has been largely because Kevin worked so well with the trustees and with all his administrators. In fact, yesterday, the HEB committee was here. We're in the top 3 school districts being considered for the HEB award, and they were impressed with how collaborative our district is. And I think that speaks a lot about our superintendent and the way he manages our district.
Thank you. Amy, I will address the next question to you first. Based on your own experience, how would you characterize the relationship between administrators, teachers, coaches, and students?
Can you read that one more time?
Sure.
Based on your own experience, how would you characterize the relationship between administrators, teachers, coaches, and students?
It's very symbiotic. Everyone works together. Gosh, we've had so many amazing teachers and coaches and administrators who've all brought something different to the table. I'll use an example of one of our teachers, Mr. Molaski, who's the department head, science department head at the high school, is phenomenal. And Marshall, my son, will end up having had him for 3 years in a row at the high school. That's how much he loves him. So he's a chemistry teacher, and he's amazing, but he's also a counselor. He actually has certification in student counseling. And so he really crosses that boundary, as do many of the coaches, between teacher and confidant. And I think a lot of teachers, administrators, and coaches play that role. And it's been wonderful for our family to experience.
Thank you. Margaret?
Yes, our personal experience would be, I would say we've had some amazing teachers, and I love the way that they work with us as parents and our students. And in fact, that to me has been the most rewarding part. My son, who's here today, we went and met with his chemistry teacher. And I'm a big proponent of parents, when you have an issue with your teacher, that you meet with the teacher, your child, all together, and come up with a plan and a strategy. And I've done that several times. And my other son, his teacher is here this evening, and she made such a huge impact on his life that to this day he still refers to her, because she went above and beyond, working with him, tutoring him in the morning. And I think that's what makes this district and our teachers so phenomenal and so unique, is they go above and beyond to put in the best. They want the best for your students. So I would say that's good.
Okay, the microphone now goes to Jim. And Jim, the question again is, based on your own experience, how would you characterize the relationship between administrators, teachers, coaches, and students?
So are you looking for our personal experience within the district?
If you choose,
We've
it
had,
doesn't have to be necessarily within the district, but based on your own experience.
Okay. Well, our experience here in this district has been terrific, especially with the coaches, with both of my children being in athletics. And I still talk to those coaches today, text them after the baseball games, last night's game, Coach Thompson. So, you know, my relationships with all the teachers and administrators and the coaches has been something very special. And if it wasn't, I probably would not be sitting here trying to, you know, put a lot of time and effort into making this district better, because my family would really enjoy it, and I want to do whatever I can to make it better.
Ryan?
I think what's impressed me in my time with all of our kids in the school is the cohesiveness between the administration and the teachers. And I didn't know this until a recent conversation with Kevin Brown, but Kevin actually wrote a dissertation on how to interview people. That was his PhD dissertation, and you get him talking about it and he won't stop. But it's fascinating. And I think, and he has instituted that throughout the school. And it used to be that every employee that was hired, Kevin individually interviewed. Now he's trained others to do it. I think that puts in place they develop a personality. The teachers are very diverse, but they're personalities that work together. And I think they end up collaborating for our kids so that they can do multiple things. Teachers give away their time to the students and cooperate with other teachers to let students do more than one activity. And I think that's what I've observed, and I think it's outstanding.
Okay, Brian, you can hold on to the microphone there for a moment, and we'll move to question 5. What are your thoughts about the current school budget? What would shape and inform your budgeting priorities?
Off the cuff, my thoughts on the current school budget is, it is awfully tight, and it's getting tighter. And I don't think we can count on Austin helping us, and it's gonna get worse. And I don't mean to be all gloom and doom, but I really am concerned that the public financing of public education is going to go down, down, down. I think what we achieved with the foundation is phenomenal. But I think the reality is, over the next several years, we're going to have to figure out how to do more with less. And, you know, so far the school district has managed to do it, but it's hard. Teachers haven't gotten raises. And being the child of 2 public school teachers, I understand how much that hurts. And I think that shows how dedicated our teachers are, that they're still here for our kids, and we can't give them raises. Our economy is rebounding. Other professions are doing better than they were 10 years ago, but we're getting squeezed.
Jim, would you like me to repeat the question?
That would be great. Thank you.
What are your thoughts about the current school budget? What would shape and inform your budgeting priorities?
It is definitely tight after speaking with Dr. Brown. And the way that Texas, the state of Texas, does their financing for public schools, and we all know about the Robin Hood, is something that's, I don't really understand how they could finance public schools that way. And so if we voted as a community to raise our taxes to go to our school system, the state basically would take 70% of that before we could use whatever we raise and voluntarily raise our taxes. So in Massachusetts, like I said, when I got on the school board, I personally audited the school's finances, redid how we did the budgeting, and the school budgeting is something that I've had a lot of experience with. And when I left Massachusetts, I was in the middle of finalizing a 15-year long-term financial plan for the town with capital expenditures and everything. And in about 10 years, I had a few extra seconds.
Thank you. Thank
I
you.
just want, can I have the time back?
Margaret. Oh, you just need a couple more sections?
Yeah, I've been short on some. If I could just finish this one thought, I'm sorry.
I don't know.
I will
5
pick it up with
seconds.
other questions. So I did this plan about 9 years ago, and we moved 8 years ago, and in the 10th year is when I told the community that there was going to be problems. And they're calling me now, the audit committee and the finance committee, to go over my numbers because that reality is happening. And that is one of the main reasons I wanted to run for the school board now, was to look at the finances, and the numbers are enjoyment I get with trying to help the school system. So.
Thank you. Margaret?
Yes, 53% of our property taxes go directly to the state general fund. And I have to say, I'm so proud of our district and the budget that we put together. It is a tight budget. Our business manager, Mike Hager, does an amazing job of coming up with cost savings through solar panels that we have at the high school and at Woodridge. He's done things with retrofitting lighting, the air conditioning units, and he is always on the lookout for savings. Our district was named one of the leanest run districts by TASB, which is the Texas Association of School Boards, of personnel in the state. We just really, in many ways, I think that we need to go on a roadshow to show people how to run a district. We do it with very little, but we do it with excellence. And in fact, in 2011, 25% of our budget cuts we made across the board at every campus, and those have not been restored. But we continue to deliver a good product.
And Amy, would you like me to restate the question?
So as Margaret said, 53% of our money leaves the district. It still stuns me. Every time I see that number, I cannot believe that it's legal. One of the things that I would encourage the district to do is to still pursue avenues to repeal that or give that lessened. I'm not exactly sure what avenues we have gone down and you know, what avenues remain to go down. So I would encourage that. The other thing is, as with any budget, our home budgets, we have to trim the fat. And I haven't seen the budget numbers exactly, but I do have some ideas of places where we could do that. So I would definitely look into that. The other thing I wanted to say is thank goodness for the foundation and for Mule Team, because without organizations like that, we couldn't run this district. So if any members of those are out there, thank you so much for what you do.
All right, we'll now move to question number 6, and Margaret, you'll be the first responder. There is a $135 million bond package on the May 6th ballot that addresses long-term needs of our district. What parts of the bond proposal do you find compelling?
Well, I am excited really about the entire package because the entire package affects every single campus on our district. And each one will be touched with the engaged classrooms and the technology that you'll see. I like what we're going to do at the high school, especially with regard to some of the common areas, the cafeteria, and we are putting together some really neat proposals of different things that are going to happen with some innovative programs, with the culinary arts program coming to the high school, an incubator program, which is a kind of a business Shark Tank type program that's going to be at the high school, the junior school, a STEM classroom, some really good things. We spent a lot of time, in fact, this board delayed this bond by over a year so that we could really dig deep and look at each one of these proposals, and I'm excited about each one. I think it's going to be a great package.
Thank you. Amy?
So I've seen the bond presentation, I think 3 times now, and it is amazing. The things that are proposed for the district are incredible, and so much of the capital improvements have been needed for years. So absolutely we need it. It will benefit everyone. I feel like in looking at the plan that there is something for everyone in the bond. And so I do think it's wonderful. One thing that does concern me, however, that I've asked for is a line item budget for the bond. How much is each project going to cost? Just to get an idea, can we really do all this? And what prompted me to do that was a friend of mine who's an architect and a builder attended the presentation with me. And he left and said, how in the world are we going to do all that for $135 million? I said, you would know, you're a builder, you're an architect. And so I visited with Mike Hagar, and he said they did not have a line item budget, but that they trusted the architects to know how much everything cost. I'd still like to see a line item budget. It would make me feel more comfortable. That's how I run my house.
Thank you. Ryan? Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, that's okay. The part that impresses me most with the bond package is the creativity in which they address some really challenging problems. When you see the overlay of how landlocked our district is, just for hard facilities, and you realize that our student body is increasing and increasing, and we can't just grab extra land. We're not like Northeast ISD where we can grab a big pasture and build a new school. We have small areas. I love the way the long-term planning for the high school. I think it was very impressive. Do a little bit now, do a little bit in 10 years, and try and keep the cohesiveness, because we don't have the luxury of moving students elsewhere while we do this. I thought that was impressive. I'm also very impressed with the cooperative learning experience that they're doing for the high school, having seen what colleges are doing, where you bring kids with different experiences in and have them learn from each other. I think that's the way of the future, and I'm glad as a high school we're getting out there and doing it.
And Jim.
I promise to be short on this one. I think they've done a great job with the bond also. And in talking with Dr. Brown, there's some things in this bond that we probably would have normally seen in operating, but we can't do it in operating because the state would take some of that money if we raised our taxes. So, you know, the use of the bond to do some of these things was very creative, and all that money stays within our district, which is very important if we're going to raise our taxes.
Jim, you can retain the microphone, and we'll move to question 7. What do you see as the educational strengths in our district?
The teachers. I think our teachers are phenomenal, and I think that's the most important thing we can do is just retain quality teachers, and then when teachers leave and retire, we replace them with quality teachers. I think teachers are our school system, and I will do whatever I can to make sure we maintain the high integrity of our teachers.
Thank you. Brian.
That question's a bit of a softball, and Jim answered it perfectly. It is the teachers. Teachers are the front line of any education system, and our teachers are extraordinary. If you compare them to teachers in the other school districts in the city, they are the longest tenured, by far. They are the most educated in terms of advanced degrees. We have a phenomenal faculty. But the other thing that I think we do a great job of, and again, this is where the foundation helps, is we provide those teachers with the resources they need. You walk into Mr. Atkins' freshman biology class, and it had better equipment than the biology class I had at Rice. It was phenomenal what he had. So I think the resources are great. And then I think finally, I do say that the administration, which sets a tone for the teachers, supporting them, providing them what they need, advocating for them. I think all three of those go together, but ultimately it's the teachers.
All right. Thank you. Amy, if you would please respond.
Okay, this is overkill, but the teachers. Brian and I were talking about, before this started, about Mr. Molaski, and when I went into his class for the first time last year, when my son had him for chemistry, I asked him if I could audit his class and just come and go and some days, and he said absolutely. I never made it there, but I might still at some point. Teachers are amazing. We still have teachers who call us, who had my sons in elementary school. They still come to their baseball games. Carol Walters, who was their Heights teacher, was just at their baseball game the other day. And they love her and they hug her, and she cares about them. And kids at this age need to feel like there's a whole community that does care about them. The other thing I wanted to say was our support staff is amazing. Mary in the attendance office is so friendly every time I call. Patty in the athletic office does so much after hours, and she's amazing. So we have so many amazing people in this district.
Thank you. And Margaret?
Well, we are fortunate in our district that we have 3 components that I think are essential to making a really excellent school district. And obviously the teachers are the backbone of any school district. And ours are supported by amazing administrators who get in the classroom every day and support and encourage each one of those teachers. And I think that is what really makes our district unique among districts in San Antonio and even the state, is that we really have committed administrators who really are passionate about educating students and are still engaged in the classroom and still want to be a part of that. The other part I think that is so critical is our engaged community. It's people like you who are sitting out here this evening who've been involved and are a part of that and support and encourage those teachers, administrators, and support staff and make them really who they are.
Thank you. Now, next question, this will be question number 8. Actually, we'll start with Amy. the question is, conversely, really, what do you see as the educational gaps or weaknesses in our district? What changes would you recommend?
That's a great question. And I will tell you that I'm a great researcher. I really love information and I love facts. And so preparing for this, I went online to see what our accountability ratings were. And this information is available to anyone. It's on the TEA website. And it was really interesting. The state of Texas is going to an A through F rating system, just like a report card that will go into effect in 2018. And in preparation for that, they used the 15, 16 numbers to kind of run a mock test on it to see where everyone would come out to give them an idea. And I was stunned to find out that we had 1A, a couple of Bs, some Cs, Ds, and Fs. And I'm looking into it further. I'm actually going to put it on my Facebook page when I find links, but I'm trying to figure out what that means for us. I think it means that we have to look at our curriculum and see where our holes are. So I know our teachers are wonderful at looking at the curriculum and seeing how we can improve that. So anyway, you know, the new A through F system will obviously provide some challenges for us.
Thank you. Margaret?
Okay, could you repeat the question?
Certainly. What do you see as the educational gaps or weaknesses in our district? What changes would you recommend?
Well, I wouldn't say this is a gap, but we continue to roll out the RTI, which is a program where we help students who are struggling in certain subjects. And they've just rolled that out to high school. I think that has been a great success at both the elementary and junior school, and I hope that we continue that, especially at the high school level, because that is where we really need to help our students be college ready or ready for the world. And I think that's something that is instrumental for all our students across the board to catch those children who are struggling in those classes and have resources available to them. My second thing would be was maybe communication. I think we have sometimes a lack of really good communication with our parents and communicating to them the policies that we, have in place, and doing a better job of promoting ourselves as a district. We are an awesome district, and I don't think sometimes we appreciate just what we have.
Thank you. Jim?
I think with my experience with my children, I think they got a great education. I didn't see any gaps there. I think this goes to, being a trustee, listening to the administration and talking to us and presenting us with where our weaknesses are, and then coming up with policies or guidance to fix those. But I don't think I'm a qualified person to say where educational gaps are.
Thank you. And Ryan?
I think to the extent I see a gap, I do see in kids that the writing skills I don't think are as strong as they could be. I don't know if that is a product of our times. Our kids text and social media, it's all short blasts. I write for a living. I'm a brief writer. I'm a geek. I write term papers every day. And I probably sound like an old man saying, we need to go back to grammar. But I do think there is something to be said there. I don't know whether it is because of the standardized testing and we're having to teach our kids to those skills, but I'm not sure I see the writing skills as well developed as they should be, especially if you compare them to the skills they're developing, especially the sciences and mathematics. I think we could do a better job, and perhaps it's a vertical coherence between the grades. That's the only thing I would say, and that's a pretty minor criticism.
Ryan, if you will retain the microphone. Some of you have already alluded to this, but and this is kind of a lengthy question, so I'll be happy to repeat it twice if you'd like, or a statement and question. Texas Senate leaders are raising finance reform as an issue in the tight budget year. What ideas would you share with them about Texas school funding in general, and what specific ideas or perhaps success stories about Alamo Heights could we share that would guide better state legislation?
All right, we have 1 minute to address what the state hasn't done. That's a little unfair.
That's an insurmountable task.
Yeah. I will say this, and this is kind of growing up in Litchfield, Connecticut. My 7th grade, what was then Heights project, was to compare public funding of education in Connecticut. My school system, Litchfield, was one of the wealthiest, and I had to compare it to Griswold, which was the poorest in the state. And Connecticut had a property tax funding system. Connecticut, as a 7th grader, I couldn't come up with any answers. And here I am 40 years later seeing the same thing. Connecticut eventually solved theirs with an income tax. That's not happening here in Texas. The closest thing I think that we might be able to do, and I doubt the legislature would go for it, is I think that local tax dollars ought to stay in the local area. I think we buy our houses here, we pay taxes here for this school district. I can have 10 seconds. And then I think the state would have an obligation, to the extent other communities cannot raise enough money to provide a sufficient education, then the state can provide funding, supplemental funding, to raise them up to a minimal standard. But I don't think it's fair that my local tax dollars are being taken and given to other school districts.
Thank you. Jim?
Yeah, I think we're giving out $34 million to other school districts. So I think the state has to figure out how we don't get taxed for our school system and everybody else's. And, like Brian said, other states that have the income tax, the state gives money to the communities. So in Long Meadow, we're a wealthy community, so we didn't get as much as everyone else, but we never paid our local taxes and had that money go somewhere else. And that system just doesn't seem right to me, and I don't think it's something that's gonna keep going forward, because how much can they keep taxing us for other school districts? So they gotta come up with a better solution statewide to just send money to the districts that need it and allow us to keep what we're taxing our residents for. But $34 million is a lot of money to go to other school districts.
Thank you. Margaret?
Well, it's not going to change until the Senate rolls up their sleeves and gets to work, and they put aside their own political capital and really get serious about school finance reform. It has been an issue in the state for over 20 years, and it's killing our education system. Until they put their personal agenda aside and really look at this system, and what I would do is I would host a series of community meetings across the state and get input. I would find out what school districts like Alamo Heights do to maintain the budget that we do and run the quality education that we do, and find out, put that together, come up with creative ideas. It can be done. I've been part of a process like that before, but it takes people who are willing to do the hard work, and they're not willing to do the hard work, unfortunately, in Austin right now.
Thank you. Amy?
Well, I'm not a numbers person, but again, when I look at those numbers, I'm not sure how we make it happen and how we continue to make it happen year after year. I would do a couple of things. One, as I said earlier, I try to figure out what legal avenues we've gone down to, try and recover some of our money. I think we have some amazing talent in our community. We have really bright people, attorneys, accountants, mathematicians, and who knows, there might be someone in our community who has great ideas. And so perhaps we hold an open forum to discuss it with the community, because surely amongst all of us, there are some great ideas.
Thank you. And now we're actually to our last question, and I want to thank all of the candidates for being so responsive to our guidelines, and I think we're actually a little bit ahead of time. This is the 10th question, and Margaret will be the first person to respond. In your view, what is the role of the school district in teaching students about topics such as personal integrity, sex education, cyber safety and citizenship, and drug and alcohol awareness?
Oh, wow, that's a loaded question. There's a lot there. Unfortunately, I think our school system is having to get involved and teach a lot of those issues because society and the state puts more and more of those burdens on the district to teach some of those issues. I think some of those are sensitive and can be done in a proactive and professional manner, especially the cyberbullying and some of those issues that our students are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Schools are different now than they were when you and I went to school, and so our students are dealing with a lot of these issues, and we need to confront them and deal with them on a daily basis. But I do think it's ultimately the parents' responsibility to teach the students some of those. And a lot of that does fall in the school district, and we fortunately have people who are involved and do a good job of that, but I do think that we need to continue to be engaged and talk about those issues.
Amy, if you will respond, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes.
In your view, what is the role of the school district in teaching students about topics such as personal integrity, sex education, cyber safety and citizenship, and drug and alcohol awareness?
I think like Margaret said, we live in a different age than we all grew up in. With all the things our kids are exposed to online, it sometimes feels like you're playing whack-a-mole, trying to keep everything under control. I think the school does a great job with character education, and actually this year at the high school they have flex time on Mondays, and they have a different subject every week. Some are wonderful and some are head scratchers, but I think in general it creates an opportunity for the kids to talk about these subjects that perhaps they wouldn't otherwise talk about. So ultimately it's the parents' job to talk about those subjects, but I really appreciate that the school does give support and does pay attention to those issues as well.
Thank you. Ryan?
Again, 1 minute to address pretty broad topic. I look at the school's role as part of the village. And I truly believe it does take a village to raise children. And part of the reason we live in this community, this small town in the middle of a very big city, is because we trust this community. And the schools are part of that. And the schools, our kids are in the schools for large parts of their day. So obviously the schools are going to have to play a role in educating them in integrity and educating them how to be good citizens. But I think we also have to be careful not to place too much on our schools or expect too much from them, because ultimately we'll set them up to fail. I don't think a school can do everything. I think parents are the first part of it. I think schools are a part of it. I think the community is a part of it. And so I think they have a role. I think they play their role well. But I think we have to be very careful as we set these policies not to put too much pressure on the schools.
And Jim?
Thank you, Ryan, that was a very good answer. I agree. Yeah. I agree, and you know, it seems kids these days are on the phones, on their iPads, a lot, so I know that cyber safety is very important. So, you know, I think whatever the schools can do to help with that is important. Teaching to be good citizen and personal integrity is very important. And, you know, I try to hire high school students to work for me and try to help with the personal integrity and everything also, because I think that's important. But it is a tough day and age, and so whatever the schools can do in those aspects is important. But it is the parents' role and the community's role to help out with that too.
All right, thank you. Now that concludes the prepared questions that we have, and we're now going to move to the closing statements, and actually Jim will be the first to provide his closing statement to us, and each of the candidates will have 3 minutes for their closing statement.
thank you. I enjoyed being here tonight, and thank you all for coming. So I touched a little bit on the financial background and things I did in the other school district, and forming the long-range plan and seeing financially, you know, this is the time, I think, with public school systems across the country and our country itself, where the financial issues are going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. And so I wanted to get involved at this time, looking at our budget picture and how tight our budget is, to see, you know, if I could use some of my experience to help this school district out that way. My family and I, we love living here. Again, I've said I've always been involved in the communities that I've lived, and serving on the school board would be an honor, and thank you.
Ryan?
Thank you all for being here. I think it is important that you come, these questions are asked, we share it. What I noticed here was there aren't tremendous differences in the answers. The panelists, we all recognize what the problems are. We may have some different ideas as to how to address them, but what does strike me is these are up here with me, three very thoughtful people. And I think that's part of our community. I think the strongest thing about this school district is the community as a whole. Because the community cares so much and supports it so well, we are able to get through these hard times. And I think these are hard times. These are hard times financially. These are hard times we couldn't really address it very much on social challenges. Our kids are living in a world that is far, far different from what we grew up in. And we as a community can do a lot to help them outside of the schools, but we also need the schools to help when the kids are in school. And I think the schools have done a great job, but it's going to be challenging. The 24-hour code of conduct, the academic integrity. What really impressed me this year was when all of this blew up and hit the newspapers, which is the last place we want to be other than, you know, on the sports pages and accolades. When it hit, the school district responded by, all right, let's get together, let's visit this. They got input from the community, and they are revising them. My son Grant has been involved in revising it and has been fascinated. He has loved the experience because he believes that the administration and the schools are really listening to them. And I think what we're getting out of it is a better policy. And this policy will have to be changed again at some point, because the world is always changing. And I think the fact that we have these issues bubble up isn't a sign of a community in disarray or huge problems. It's life, and things change, and we adapt. And I've been very impressed with the way the school district has come together to adapt and to develop. Ultimately, I was sitting up here thinking, why is it I run? What is it? And I was looking out at, and they're going to be embarrassed on this, I've got two daughters who are now sitting in the audience. And part of it is to maintain this excellence for them. Part of it is I owe a debt. My two boys who are graduating, those guys have gotten the most incredible set of experiences in education, and now they are headed off to college. They're leaving our community, but they'll be back. But I think I owe a debt to them, to the school for that, and I want to maintain it for my daughters. And I would just like to close with, campaign promises are terrible, but there's one thing that I can promise you if I am elected, that with every issue that comes up, I will take the time to gather the facts, and I will look for all of the facts. I will then deliberate very carefully over those facts. And then ultimately, as a member of the board, I will vote for what I believe is the best solution for all students.
Thank you.
That's what I can promise.
Amy?
I want to thank all of you for coming to the forum tonight. The very fact that you are here means that you care about this school district. We've discussed many issues tonight, and you've heard many different ideas. I believe we live in one of the most dynamic, friendly, and unique communities in Texas. I want to protect this rich legacy by continuing to support the great aspects of our schools, while at the same time being vigilant about identifying ways that we can improve. Here is my vision for this school district. Honesty. When issues arise, the truth must be our first objective. Transparency. This school year, several issues affecting many community members exposed a distinct lack of transparency from the school district administrators. Both the Academic Integrity Code and the 24-Hour Code were under scrutiny for their lack of clear language and inappropriate enforcement. The subsequent revisions by the district included input from only a small percentage of those who were actually asking for change. When community members asked to read the new versions before they were adopted, they were told no, they could not read them. As currently proposed, both of these policies do not reflect all beliefs in this community. If I'm elected, I will encourage the district to hold town hall meetings regularly. The current model for community participation does not allow for an open forum to share ideas. Most meetings, like this forum, are filled with specific agenda items and pre-planned questions with only a small amount of time for people to speak freely and ask questions. This must change in order to allow for a free flow of thoughts and information. Accountability. From the bond money to adoption of new policy to school ratings, we as taxpayers deserve to know more. I would also continue to make our schools a safe environment in which students can learn. I've spoken with Maureen Molak several times recently and am committed to supporting David's Law, as it would give schools more options for dealing with bullying. Achievement. In light of potentially deficient accountability ratings, we must continue to examine our curriculum for strengths and weaknesses. We have been exemplary in the past, and we can be exemplary again. You and your kids deserve this. Last but not least, I would ensure that the Alamo Heights School Board would think critically about all issues by personally asking the tough questions and working towards excellence. Board policy currently states that the board adopts a shared vision based on community beliefs to guide local education. I'm committed to getting to know all of you and your beliefs and incorporating them into each and every issue that the board discusses. Let's bring the shine back to '09. Thank you for your time.
Margaret.
Thank each one of you for attending this forum this evening. I serve as a trustee, meaning I have been entrusted by you, the voter, to maintain the public trust in our school district and to promote the district's vision for the future. It has been a privilege for me, but it's also been a lot of hard work. Meetings, late nights, time spent away from home, and working through some pretty tough issues. However, at the end of each meeting, I can honestly say this board has made the right decisions. I've been at late night board meetings where we've had pretty passionate discussions, and I know probably all 7 of those people did not sleep that evening. That is how seriously we take this job. We are available at all times. Our names are in the directory, and people, I encourage you to contact us. I'm so glad to see this many people here this evening. It is a little bit disheartening and discouraging when we have our board meetings and so few people come to those meetings. Those are open meetings, and we have 2 a month, the GMP meeting and the board meeting, and those are open to the public. We are a very transparent board. The only conversation that we have outside of those 2 meetings is directly after our board meeting, which deals specifically with either personnel issues or issues dealing with student issues. And we do not discuss policy. So we are very open and we are very available. I'm also very proud of our district. I think we're unique in the fact that we have had, in this past 2 years, dealt with some very difficult issues. Instead of sweeping those issues under the rug, we have a superintendent who took the initiative to appoint a task force of a broad-based number of community members. I also suggested some additional members. He was open to my suggestions. Second of all, and these people worked above and beyond. Some of those people are in this room this evening, and I thank you because you really set the tone and put in the additional work to come up with substantial recommendations. Our academic code. Instead, we made mistakes. They realized they made mistakes. The administration said, we made mistakes, and you know what? We need to get this right. And what they did is they had a series of meetings with students, a broad section of students, teachers, administrators, and coaches, so that everybody would have a seat at the table and got recommendations and heard from everyone. In addition, we had parent groups that were still discouraged, and they were personally invited to give their feedback. I know of only one family who took that opportunity to give their feedback. I, as a board member, also gave my personal feedback. I didn't feel that comfortable with some of the recommendations, but I did meet with them to discuss those. Public education is a hallmark of democracy, and being a board member is critical to maintaining the education system in this country. The crucial responsibility and the close of trustees to the voters make the local school board the purest example of democracy in our society. And I encourage each one of you to be a part of that and take a role in that. Please know that we serve at your behest and are here to represent you. And I ask for your vote on May 6th so that we can continue the good work.
Thank you. This actually concludes the formal program. We have now about a little over 15 minutes in which you will be able to speak directly to each of the candidates. We're going to make that very informal. In fact, they can step away from the table and come down into the audience. If you have particular questions you'd like to address to anyone, you may do so, or just speak with them directly. And I would like to personally thank all of them. I think this has been outstanding. I think you all have done an excellent job. And thank you.
Junior school and Facebook. Thank you all for participating, and everybody that helped put this together. So the candidates will now come down and answer any questions or anything they didn't get to address.